Hello, and welcome back to the Shakey Sonnet Show. I am Tootight Lautrec, the drag laureate of the Sonnetarium, and here we are once again in the Sonnetarium at the bottom of the down staircase in the permanently sequestered remainder section of an unnamed local library, which may or may not have a couple of proud, stately lions couchant on the front steps with methinks a bit of a come-hither glint in their eyes. Today, we're going to be looking at Sonnets 130 and 131, which I think are delightfully flirtatious and even quite funny. Not everyone, I warn you, agrees. Sonnet 130 is one of Shakespeare's most famous sonnets, where he takes the conventions of sonneteering, the conventions of praising the beloved to high heaven, and turns those conventions right on their heads. If you would like a wonderful rendition of Sonnet 130, there's a recording of Alan Rickman reciting it, and there happens to also be a recording of my cousin Eustace T. Lucht lip-syncing Alan Rickman reading Sonnet 130, which I will link below for your pleasure. But as I said, not everyone is as charmed by 130 as we here in the Sonnetarium are. Don Patterson calls Sonnet 130 a wretched little poem, even though he goes on to say that Sonnet 131 redeems it a bit. Stephen Booth considers it merely a winsome trifle. We shall see for ourselves, shan't we? Let's get right into it. Sonnet 130. My mistress's eyes are nothing like the sun. Coral is far more red than her lips red. If snow be white, why then her breasts are dun. If hairs be wires, black wires grow on her head. I have seen roses damasked red and white, but no such roses see I in her cheeks. And in some perfumes is there more delight than in the breath that from my mistress reeks. I love to hear her speak, yet well I know that music hath a far more pleasing sound. I grant I never saw a goddess go. My mistress, when she walks, treads on the ground. And yet, by heaven, I think my love as rare as any she belied with false compare. Lovely. So here we have all the conventions of the normal Petrarchan sonnets and all the Elizabethan sonneteers as well, where lovers compare their mistress's eyes to the sun, their lips to coral, their skin, which is supposed to be white as snow, and their hair like golden wires. And even though if hairs be wires sounds like a bit of an insult, it isn't actually. The sonneteering conventions of the day were just, it was a complimentary way of saying that their hair was finely glowing, like filaments of spun gold, like wires of spun gold. And for instance, there's a sonnet cycle called Diella by a person named Richard Lynch, which was published in 1596, which describes hair as her hair exceeds gold forced in smallest wire, in smaller threads than those Arachne spun. And also in Spenser's Epithalamium, her long, loose locks like golden wire. So even though wire sounds like it could be somewhat derogatory, it wasn't. It was a convention, but the difference here is that this mistress's eyes are not like spun gold, they are black. So then we get to the second quatrain, which continues the overturning of conventional beauty tropes, where you would expect to have cheeks like red and white roses, which I couldn't find damasked roses where one rose has both the red and the white in it. So I did the best that I could with my Frida Kahlo inspired look today. So cheeks like red and white roses, or strawberries and cream, breath like perfume. And here we have, in some perfumes is there more delight than in the breath that from my mistress reeks, which sounds also like an insult because who wants to think of their breath as reeking? But apparently, according to many editors, reeking didn't have such a derogatory connotation to it or weight to it. It used to be in the 16th century, it just meant something from which vapors were emitted, like the breath, or like perfume, like smoke or like steam. And it didn't take on the sense of an offensive smelling odor until about 1710, where it was used to record someone who was heated and perspiring and emitted a bad smell. And that's when it began to take the term that we think of today, where something really stinks if you say it reeks. However, this is what many of the editors say, but I found that there is a word reeky, R-E-E-K-Y, from Reiki, which was used in the early 15th century to mean smoky, steamy, vaporous, and giving off a rank and offensive vapor. So I think that we're not amiss in attributing some slight stench to our poor mistress's eyes here. And also, as Blakemore Evans notes, Shakespeare used reeks in other less complimentary ways in his plays, where in Coriolanus there's a line that says, you common cry of curs whose breath I hate as reek of the rotten fens. Or in Julius Caesar, now whilst your purpled hands do reek and smoke. Or in Timon of Athens, and sprinkles in your faces your reeking villainy. So reek did have a pejorative sense to it, and I think that I'm going to stick with that. We'll let the reek of smoke, which the fire engines are running after, run their course, and then we'll continue. The reek of villainy has blown off, and the sirens have gone. In the third quatrain, we find out that this mistress is a real down-to-earth woman. She speaks when she speaks. It isn't necessarily like music. She just talks like a normal person. And when she walks, she doesn't necessarily walk on like a goddess whose feet never touch the ground. This woman is a real down-to-earth woman whose feet do hit the ground when she walks. And then we get to the couplet. And yet, by heaven, I think my love as rare as any she, and by she you can read woman, any woman belied with false compare, any woman who's praised falsely, as in those previous sonnets by those other sonneteers. So here's this playful little, I think playful sonnet. A lot of commentators take this sonnet as some sort of slander against the mistress. Some say that it shows the narrator's disgust with what they call the dark lady, and some offer it as proof that the narrator isn't in fact bisexual at all, if we're to take it all in stride with the first 128 poems or 26 poems, but that he's fully gay because he finds the mistress rather off-putting and ugly. But to these people I say, read it again and pay attention. The couplet is absolutely clear that he adores this woman, and he finds her really quite beautiful. And I imagine it as, I actually get a stronger vision of this woman because of this sonnet. I think that she's smart. I think she's witty. I think she has a wonderful sense of humor that she shares with the narrator. And I find that this sonnet is a funny, full-fledged love poem, which is admirable in every way. It's a delightfully witty little ditty. So we go from that to Sonnet 131, where we get some real conventions of sonneteering. Sonnet 131. Thou art as tyrannous, so as thou art, as those whose beauties proudly make them cruel. For well thou know'st to my dear doting heart, thou art the fairest and most precious jewel. Yet in good faith some say that thee behold, thy faith hath not the power to make love groan. To say they err, I dare not be so bold, although I swear it to myself, and to be sure that is not false I swear. 1,000 groans, but thinking on thy face, one on another's neck, do witness bear, thy black is fairest in my judgment's place. In nothing art thou black save in thy deeds, and thence this slander, as I think, proceeds. Okay, so thou art as tyrannous, as cruel, as unfeeling. And here we have a generic sonneteering trope. A lady's insensibility to a lover's suffering is just another standard element in sonnet sequences. Thou art as tyrannous, so as thou art. In other words, the way you look now. You are as tyrannous, even the way that you look. You don't have the conventions of beauty, the fair hair and fair eyes. You have dark eyes and dark hair. But even as you are, you act as tyrannous as those who are fair and beautiful and who know that they're fair and beautiful, those whose beauties proudly make them cruel. You're as unfeeling as all those other women whose beauty is often praised to the hilt, even though you are not one of them because of your unfashionable dark eyes and hair. But although you're not fair in coloring, for well thou know'st, to my dear doting heart, thou art the fairest and most precious jewel. Even though you're not fair in coloring, you're fair in beauty. In my eyes, anyway. You're much more beautiful than all those other stuck-up wenches. Then we get to the second quatrain. Yet, in good faith, some say that thee behold, which is an odd way of saying it, but some people who look at you say that your face doesn't have the power to make people groan. Okay, but I say, but I won't say it out loud. I say it to myself. I think you're beautiful, and I groan in secret all the time. Whenever I think of you. Other people may not groan when they see you. I'm groaning. I'm groaning for you. And I'm not lying, says the third quatrain. And to be sure, that is not false, I swear. 1,000 groans, but thinking on thy face, one on another's neck. So groan after groan after groan after groan. One on another's neck. Apparently there is a proverb that says that one misfortune comes on the neck of another. And I mean, if we're talking on coming on the neck of another, that's a completely different conversation. But one groan after the other, 1,000 groans just thinking about your face. And you know that in my judgment, thy black, your dark coloring, is the most beautiful in my judgment's place. In my opinion, your beauty is the most beautiful. It is fair. It is beautiful. And then we get to the couplet. In nothing art thou black, save thy deeds. So here we have black gathering up all of its metaphorical force to mean the conventional sense of bad. Thou art black in nothing save thy deeds. And thence this slander, the idea that people say that you're black, that's what this slander proceeds from, because you're such a cruel and disdainful person. Now, again, some editors think that this is extremely cutting, that in nothing art thou black save in thy deeds. There's a lot of disagreement about what those deeds might be. And I could say that I could concede their point, given this narrator's history of ascribing bad deeds to his beloved. But even though I could see how they could come to this conclusion, I think the slander in line 14 is not that she's been promiscuous with someone other than the narrator, but that she's cruel by withholding her love from him. That is, she's acting like those other stuck-up women who think they're all that. But he says that she is all that. But, you know, you are all that, but please don't act like those stuck-up wenches. Don't spurn my love. Please let me in. And I feel like it's a pleasure. It's a clever plea for recognition, for a returning of love. It's a wooing sonnet. It's not a chastisement for nefarious deeds done with others after dark, as far as I'm concerned. It's just, please return my love. So what do we have here in sonnets 130 and 131? Oh, I don't know. We have a honk. Definitely, we have a mistress. We know that for certain. Dramatically, where might these fit into Shakespeare's work? A smart suitor with a smart mistress. They're both sort of smart alecky. I imagine someone like Beatrice and Benedick in Much Ado About Nothing, where they have this playful antagonism, which is really more a form of foreplay. And I could see this fitting in quite well, especially 130, where he's playfully pulling her pigtails, it seems like. So narratively, how does this fit into the full range of everything that we've read so far? So if we read this as a continuing narrative, we see that this is a more mature narrator. Where in sonnets 21 and 49, he uses the very conventions that he scorns in 130 to describe the young man. Now he's got this smart, vivacious, beautiful woman with a sense of humor who appreciates this sly slating of conventions in order to praise her beauty. And I'm all for it. The narrator saying, I've got a dark beauty, I'm back in the game. She's not conventionally beautiful, but she knows she's got the goods, and I've got it good for her. And, you know you're a beauty, I know you're a beauty. Let's get this beauty call going. So, I imagine the narrator and his new beloved mocking all those other blue-eyed, blonde-haired bimbos who think they're all that, much like the crowd that flops around a former, now disgraced, former president of the United States, for instance. All those blonde-haired, blue-eyed bimbos. So, I see only joy and humor and fun in sonnets 130 and 131. A fitting beginning to a new romance. Perhaps I'm wrong. If you think so, feel free to fight me in the comment section below. Perhaps my obsession with looking for all the wonder that's in the world all around us all the time has clouded my vision with rose-colored wonder. But I don't think so. Beauty and wonder do abound. It's all around. Pay attention. Until next time, I am Tootight Lautrec. Mwah.